Okay, it's good to be back. Hey everybody, how are you doing? Tekking101 here. I have returned from my trip, so thanks to all of you for your patience during the last week. Hey Barry, it's been forever! Man, thanks for house sitting while I've been gone. It's great. Let's get a hug. Reunion hug. Okay, that's about as close as we can get there. But hey, I ran into your second cousin Larry while I was down in North Carolina. I know you two really haven't talked much ever since the Buzz Lightyear incident, but, you know, I mean, he's doing okay, so maybe you should talk to him. I did bring it up, but I don't think he's ready to give you the action figure back yet. I don't know. That's your family's issue. You worry about that. Okay. But yeah, hi everybody. How are you doing? Let's get right back to it. I mean, why not? I have this weird feeling, this sort of like prophetic dream I had last night that kind of showed me this next chapter of One Piece is going to be particularly intense. So before we get to that, let's talk about Devil Fruit Rarities. That seems like a good discussion, okay? And this kind of all started a couple weeks back when we found out some nice hot exposition involving the Gamu Gamu no Mi. Remember when Who's Who was fighting against Jinbei? Who's Who revealed that he used to be a member of CP9 back in the day, and he was tasked by the world government to safeguard and transport the Gamu Gamu no Mi, the devil fruit that, you know, Luffy, the main character of the story, has, right? Okay, so what's up with that? We still don't know. We don't know why the world government specifically wanted the Gamu Gamu no Mi, or why the Gamu Gamu no Mi is so important, or whatever, but they were willing to eliminate one of their top assassins in order, you know, because he failed to safeguard it, okay? So it's really, really a big deal here, okay? And so we'll still find out about that in the future, but I made a video about it where I referred to the Gamu Gamu no Mi as a rare devil fruit, maybe even the most rare devil fruit if the world government really wants it that badly. And I received a bunch of different comments that were worded differently, but they all had the same basic premise, and I pulled an example, just one of them here today that we'll be reading. This comment comes from Super Kami Guru. I've never understood how one fruit can be more rare than another. Isn't there only one kind of every fruit? I know there's quite a few that have fire abilities, but each have their own unique traits, like how Ace was a Logia type, but Oven is a Paramecia type. There's only one type of every fruit, so to me, no fruit is more rare than another. Okay, like I said, I got a bunch of comments with this same basic thread, this same basic premise of like, hey, there's only one Gamu Gamu no Mi in existence, so of course it's the most rare Gamu Gamu no Mi. There's only one, as is the case with every other devil fruit. That was actually an ironclad rule about devil fruits we learned very, very early on in the story. There's only one kind of each, or no two people can have the same devil fruit power at the same time. Now in the story, it's not as ironclad because there's actually only one exception to that rule, and it's actually Kaido's fruit, which is hilarious because Kaido has a mythical zone, and so far that what we know of, mythical zones are the rarest category. And by the way, I should clarify that right now. We're not talking about, you know, different rarities with the classifications of devil fruit. People understand that. Paramecias are way more common than Logias. There's like hundreds of Paramecias out there, but very few Logias. And there's even more few mythical zones. Yeah, so like the sheer number of each category, people understand that, but we're not talking about rarities there. We're talking about rarities of individual fruits. But anyway, yeah, Kaido's Ua Ua no Mi model Azure Dragon is a mythical zone, should be one of the rarest fruits out there, but it's actually less rare than every other devil fruit because Vegapunk extracted some of the DNA or lineage factor from Kaido to create an artificial version of it, which Momo has of course consumed. So that means that, yeah, there's only one Gamu Gamu no Mi in the entire world. There's only one Mera Mera no Mi in the entire world, but right now, there's actually two Ua Ua no Mi model Azure Dragons. I was also thinking maybe it depends on if Momo, like when he dies, if his fruit will be reincarnated because it's artificial. Maybe that's the reason Vegapunk considered it a failure. So Momo, if he ever dies, or when he dies, you know, eventually of just old age, which might come sooner rather than later, if that happens, then yeah, the fruit might just poof, just disappear because it was artificial. It doesn't go back into the cycle again, okay? So if that's the situation there, then yeah, there's only one Ua Ua. But for right now, there's two, which is hilarious. Okay, so yeah, devil fruit rarities. The question is, like, can there be rare individual fruits because there's only one of each? And the answer that I arrived at is yes, of course there can be. There's a lot of different factors out there that determine the rarity of a devil fruit beyond the fact that there's just one of each, okay? It could be, of course, the classification, paramecia, logia, zone, but well beyond that, we also have whether or not it has already been cataloged in the devil fruit encyclopedia. We have who the user of the devil fruit currently is, because that's a big factor of whether or not, when it's going to be reincarnated or how difficult it's going to be to acquire based on the person that currently has it. Where it gets reincarnated at is going to be a big deal. And of course, even in some situations, the price of the devil fruit, because every once in a while, devil fruit users might end up, in the human auction house, because we saw, the slip that Duval gave to Sanji, like, here's the list of the auction house prices, and, it's like giants are this much, male merfolk are this much, female mermaids are this much, and at the very bottom of the list, it said devil fruit users, like, market price, or like a varying price depending on the devil fruit they had. And then, of course, we had the op fruit, the Opi no Mi, Law's fruit, that was acquired by Diaz Barrels, Drake's dad, and he was going to sell this to the world government for 10 billion berries, which at the, 5 billion berries, I think, for the devil fruit. I think it was 10 billion that Doflamingo won in Dressrosa from Riku Dole III. I think that 10 billion is the highest amount of money ever mentioned in One Piece, and 5 billion for the devil fruit. That's still a lot of money. That is more money than Kaido's bounty. Kaido is the most wanted pirate that's currently alive right now, with a bounty of over 4 billion, and the government was willing to pay 5 billion, more than Kaido's bounty, to acquire a single devil fruit. That basically is Whitebeard's bounty. Whitebeard's bounty was a little bit higher than it, but not by much. And then Rogers was like 500 million higher. Okay, so literally, Whitebeard's bounty is equivalent to the value that the Op fruit has because of its, immortal surgery and everything like that, okay? So let's start with the encyclopedia, okay? Because there is a devil fruit encyclopedia in the One Piece world. We saw it in the flashback. It was mentioned many times, but we first saw it during the flashback with Sanji when he was part of the Germa. He was reading it in his room, okay? So, I would love for there to be a devil fruit encyclopedia, by the way, in real life. Like, they actually release it, like, as a collector's item or something. I don't care if the whole book is in Japanese and it never gets an English translation. I would import it. I could sort of read Japanese, but I would learn it to read it fluently if it meant, having that book. It's like when, the Hunter x Hunter, they released, the Greed Island binder and all the cards. They're in Japanese, but I don't care. It's like one of those things I needed to have as, like, a fan of the series, right? So, devil fruit encyclopedia, really, really cool. And in that book is cataloged a bunch of different devil fruits, Logia, Paramecia, Zone. There's all a bunch in the book, okay? Now, we've never seen the book, like, what the pages actually look like in the story, and obviously not every single devil fruit is cataloged in the encyclopedia, but inherently, a devil fruit that would be cataloged in the encyclopedia would be less rare than a devil fruit that has not been cataloged in the encyclopedia. Why? Because in the book, it has a drawing, a depiction of the fruit, what it looks like, so every time when it gets reincarnated, hey, I know that that's the Barabara no Mi, because on page 75 of the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, the Barabara no Mi looks like a pineapple with this specific swirl pattern, and I know this is cataloged as the Barabara no Mi, the Chop Chop fruit. It has the ability to separate your body into different limbs, or like your limbs into different segments, and you can float around. You're basically, some kind of Chop Chop human or something, right? So, if you see a fruit on a branch and you identify it as a devil fruit and it's in the damn book, then you instantly know, alright, that's that. In fact, that's how Blackbeard knew what the Yami Yami no Mi looked like. Even the Yami Yami no Mi, which is a very rare Logia, it's a very unique kind of ability, it's a very strange power, that was still cataloged in the book, and Blackbeard knew exactly what he was looking for when Thatch found it, okay? So there you go. There are plenty of devil fruits, though, that are not in that book, and I'm sure even there's, like, missing entries or unfinished entries. Like, there might be an entry in the book that speaks about a devil fruit, but it doesn't have a drawing of the image. There might be, like, the Yami Yami no Mi might have had a full page, like, this is what it looks like, this is what it's called, this is its ability. There might be another one that's like, oh, this is a devil fruit that controls magnets, but we don't have a name for it, and we don't have a drawing for it. There's just apparently a devil fruit that can control magnetic forces somewhere in the world. That's kid's fruit, obviously, right? So it might be, like, unfinished in certain respects, okay? But, that's the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, and a lot of people in the One Piece world, at least in the Four Blues, don't really believe in devil fruits. They're more mythical kind of thing. A lot of them exist in the Grand Line only. So I don't know how rare it is to get your hands on the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia when you're living in the One Piece world, if you could just go to a used bookstore down the street and just pick it up, if it's like everywhere, or if it's only like very few copies of it exist. It would make sense that the Germa would have one because they were a royal family. It would make sense that Blackbeard would have access to it, being on Whitebeard's ship. You know, they might have acquired the book at some point. It might be a really rare book to begin with, right? But the fact is that it is a catalog of the devil fruits, and it has been published. There's a bunch of different copies of it somewhere in the world. And so, yeah, right away, yeah, if you find a devil fruit, though, and it's not in the book, you're like, that's kind of rare because you don't know what you're going to get. And by the way, it's not even with the mythical zones or ancient zones or the Logias. When Spondum acquired Kaku and Khalifa's fruit, Khalifa had the Awa Awa no Mi, the soap fruit, and Kaku had the giraffe fruit. They did not know which ones they were. They checked the catalog. Of course, they were CP9 and they worked for the government. They could definitely get a copy of the encyclopedia. They looked through it. They weren't in there. And that was just a standard zone, not even an ancient zone. It was just a giraffe zone and a standard paramecia, which allowed Khalifa to control soap, which, you know, she was pretty adept at using it. You know, they were assassins after all, but these aren't like super powerful devil fruits that could command the armies of the world to bow down before their greatness. Behold, I am a soap sheep. You know what I mean? So right away, the cataloging is very important, so you got to keep that in mind there. Moving on, we then have the specific user of the fruit. All right. So, for example, let's take Logias, for instance, okay? Caribou has a Logia. He has the Numa Numa no Mi, so he can turn into a swamp man, all right? His fruit will never be reincarnated back into the world unless Caribou dies. Now, he might be a Logia, and he might be able to turn intangible, so it's a little bit more difficult to kill him. But if I was going to bet between Caribou dying first, or Aka Inu, or one of the admirals dying first, I would go with Caribou, right? Because he's kind of an idiot. He's a lot of an idiot, right? So, you know, and Peckham said this himself when, you know, Caribou tried to attack Peckham's, and Peckham's just turned around and punched him in the face with hockey, knocked him through a wall. You know, Logias that think they're invincible or invulnerable, they have very short lifespans in the new world, right? So if Caribou is an idiot someday or every day and attacks somebody that's a lot stronger than him, you know, and they just gets, boom, one shot, bam, the Numa Numa no Mi has been reincarnated back in the world. Meanwhile, you have Aka Inu, who's the fleet admiral of an entire navy force, literally works under him with admirals, vice admirals, rear admirals, you know, captains, commanders, all of the infantry, all of the officers of the Marines answer to Aka Inu, and he has the power of the Magu Magu no Mi, and he's wicked tough, and he's got hockey, and he's really, really buff. Okay, you cannot underestimate the buffness of Aka Inu. So the idea of him dying really stupid or in a really easy way, and then the Magu Magu no Mi being reincarnated, very less likely compared to Caribou, you know what I mean? And also the fact, you know, he is the fleet admiral, so that means he probably has more of a desk job, more of paperwork to do. You know, he's not really going out there in the world on his own. He's probably spending most of his time at Marine HQ, but still, you know, you can't just walk in, oh, I'm gonna get the Magu Magu no Mi. All I have to do is walk into Marine HQ and assassinate the fleet admiral, and then I could get his fruit. You know, very, very hard to accomplish there compared to some other abilities, right? So yeah, that's the users. Also, there's another problem with this that arrives with, like, how often the fruit's gonna get reincarnated, i.e. Toki. Yeah, I don't think I need to go into more detail with her, but like, yeah, Toki has the power of the time fruit. So this kind of matters on who has the fruit and the nature of the fruit ability itself. It's a fruit that literally has the power of time travel. You could skip into the future apparently as many years as you want. She was born over 800 years ago, ate the fruit, and time jumped multiple times to almost the present day. She only died 20 years ago, right? So that means for 800 years, the Toki Toki no Mi was just gone. All right, it is probably most likely not in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. It has never been cataloged. Most people probably don't even know a fruit that can control time even exists. Bringing it not just into more rare than like the Gamu Gamu no Mi or the Bara Bara no Mi, but it's probably like literal mythical status. Maybe the hushed tones of people in the bars, like, you know, somebody's drunk and he's like, hey man, you hear about those devil fruits? Man, I heard about those devil fruits. Hey, wouldn't it be weird if there was a devil fruit that allowed you to, like, control time? Ah, that's stupid. Even if devil fruits were real, that's a really crazy ability. I don't know. Hey, what if a devil fruit like that did exist, and then someone ate it and traveled into the future, like 1,000 years or something, so we would have no idea of knowing, but it does exist. Man, you gotta lay off the booze. You're too drunk. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So, that's the situation there. It was gone for 800 years. By the way, we still don't know what happened to the Toki no Mi. Toki apparently died. Maybe she did. Here's the kicker. She might have been grievously wounded when she gave her prophecy as Odin Castle was burning down, but right before she died, her last breath could have been invoking the Toki no Mi, and she could have sent herself into the future. After this battle is over, after Kaido and Big Mom and everybody have been defeated, maybe Toki will pop into existence like, I'm here, everybody! Oh, I'm still grievously wounded from that night 20 years ago. But I just wanted to live and see you guys long enough, see my son and my daughter and everybody, all the scabbards here, and Wano return to the way that it was supposed to be before I pass on to the next life. So it might have been Toki only had like a few minutes left to live, but she used that power to skip 20-something years in the future just to witness those, to spend those last few minutes, with a victorious Wano. So there you go. That could have been the situation there. But of course, the Toki no Mi is probably legendary. Probably most people don't even know it exists, right? Okay, so there's that. Then we have the problem with reincarnation location. Reincarnation location. Reincation, as it were. We still don't know 100% about this, of when a devil fruit user dies, does the fruit get reincarnated, like, super close to them, like it happened with Smiley at Punk Hazard, when Smiley was the giant glob of slime that had the axolotl fruit, and, Caesar fed him the candy, and he blew up, and then the nearest fruit seemed to be the catalyst for that, where an apple was the one that turned into the next axolotl fruit, right? By the way, that fruit is now buried under feet of snow and the Shinokuni, like the petrification that's been washed over it. So the axolotl fruit rarity has been increased exponentially because it's on Punk Hazard in the New World, which is an off-limits island in an Arctic tundra buried under a bunch of snow, well, a bunch of the petrification layer, and then snow on top of that. And, it might just be a standard zone. It's not mythical. It's not ancient. It doesn't have some crazy Logia powers, but unless you get really, really lucky and you find that thing by happen chance, the axolotl fruit is wicked rare right now, okay? That's how it goes. We're not talking necessarily about strength. We're talking about just rarity or how hard it is to find or get. It would be very difficult. If somebody really, like, I don't know, there's Jeff. Jeff is a huge axolotl fan. He has a bunch of pet axolotls and everything, and he's like, man, I wish there was a devil fruit that could turn you into an axolotl. And he travels the world looking for that zone. And then he finally hears, like, yeah, I heard that it was on Punk Hazard last time I heard. And then he travels to Punk Hazard, and he spends the rest of his days with a pickaxe and a shovel, digging in the middle of the Arctic tundra, wearing all this equipment, has to wear a gas mask for all the lingering effects of Shinokuni, and he's just cold out there, and he's like, someday, it's like Holes, it's like the movie Holes, it's like, we're gonna find that treasure, so maybe that guy, maybe Jeff the axolotl fan, I finally found it, after 80 years, the axolotl fruit, and then he just keels over right before, but very rare right now, right? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, reincarnation location, right? Okay, so if that's the case and it just reincarnates close to the person, that's one thing. But what if it reincarnates, anywhere? It's up for grabs, and maybe different devil fruits have different reincarnation, rules or something. I don't know. Take Ace's fruit, the Mera no Mi. If you've ever read the Ace light novel, it starts with Ace and Mass Deuce being stranded on Sixus, which is an island, a deserted island in the middle of the East, okay? And the Mera no Mi just kind of washes ashore. So that means the Mera no Mi was just out there in the ocean, floating around for God knows how long. A week, a month, a year, 10 years, they don't rot. They're not like regular fruits, okay? So they're kind of like eternal. As long as the fruit itself doesn't get destroyed, like you toss it into a furnace or something, the fruit will continue on for decades, maybe even. It doesn't even have to be connected to an actual plant or a tree or anything like that. So, that Mera no Mi, the previous owner might have died like 50 years ago, and he died, and the fruit might have gotten reincarnated, and it maybe fell into the ocean, and it was just floating around out there, at the mercy of the sea currents for decades until it finally washed ashore on Sixus, right? So likewise, what if somebody were to die and the fruit gets reincarnated on a random island in the middle of nowhere? good luck trying to find that one. So that's pretty rare, I would say. I also threw out, now this might not work because island clouds don't really, grow plant life or anything like that, but they can support it as long as there's Earth, as long as there's Earth. So Eneru, example, he lives up in the sky. Well, he's on the moon right now, but up in the sky. What if there was an island cloud with some Verth on it and it had some plant life, just drifting in the sky? And then Eneru were to die, and the fruit got reincarnated, the Goro Goro no Mi, his Logia, got reincarnated, like... Yeah. Just a random tree, barely supported on some island cloud, and there's the fruit, just popped on it, and now it's just floating through the sky, It's possible. So those kind of situations would be way more rare. And it just depends on where it gets reincarnated in that point. Or it could be reincarnated in somebody's back garden, right? Old Mr. Jefferson gets out one day and he just walks into his back garden and he's just like, all right, time to pick some peppers and some tomatoes. And then, oh, look at this here, Mabel, we got a devil fruit. It could be that easy. In fact, some people might get them that way. Who knows, right? There's a lot of devil fruits out there. Just to show you a comparison, these are just using, like, example numbers. I don't really know the number of how many paramecias or devil fruits are out there, but as for the classifications, let's just say paramecias are the most common, because, they're pretty much everywhere. There's more paramecia users in the story. So let's just say there's 1,000 paramecias. Okay, with that, keep in mind, that's, like, the most common. So then zones, let's say 500, because, they're, like, a little more rare, but not much. There still are a lot of zones out there. And then Logias after that would be, let's say 100. There's probably not even close to 100 Logias, but this is just an example. And then we have ancient zones. I was actually dubious of whether or not ancient zones were more or less rare than Logias, but there actually are more Logias than there are ancients right now. I think there's like 11 Logias that we currently know about, and there's only 9 ancient zones. So they are technically more rare from what we know so far. And then we have mythical on the very bottom. Let's just say there's like 10 of those, right? Which there might be only that many. Who knows? Because here are the actual numbers of how many we have. We have 80-something paramecias, I think 30-something zones, and currently only 6 mythical zones, right? So those are the current numbers. We stand right there. But yeah, paramecias, depending on where they're at in the world, though, could be more rare than a Logia that just happens to reincarnate in somebody's pepper garden. Like, there you go. And then finally, we have the prices of devil fruits, because if these devil fruits are acquired by the correct parties, like, let's say, the black market, or the mafia, or the world government, for instance, they might, well, the world government wouldn't sell devil fruits, but, well, actually, okay, now that's an interesting one. That is an interesting one. So, when Diaz Barrels found the op-op fruit, the government was willing to pay $5 billion, all right? But, at the same time, devil fruit users were for sale at the human auction house, which was run by Doflamingo, which I guess that's not so much a world government thing, although the government did know it existed. That was more of an underworld thing being headed up by Doflamingo, who is technically part of the Celestial Dragons, but not really. Okay, so that's more of an underground sort of thing. But the Marines knew it existed. They just didn't do anything about it. So the whole system is corrupted. That's the point. But if a really powerful devil fruit user ended up at the human auction house, they probably wouldn't even put them up for sale. It would probably be just go, like, ship them directly to Marijois or something. Like, the Celestial Dragons would want them, probably. If there was, like, a Logia user or a Mythical Zone user or something that was captured by the Marines, okay? They wouldn't just sell that fruit or that person to just anybody, right? And the same thing goes for the actual fruit itself, right? Like, just going on a monetary standard here is like, okay, let's say you have the jacket fruit and Crocodile Suna no Mi, okay? So it's like, all right, so do you think those would sell for an equal amount of berries? No, of course the jacket fruit would sell for way more than crocodiles. It'd be like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, today we have 2 devil fruits for you today. One devil fruit allows you to control sand and dehydrate people, I guess. I don't know. I personally don't like the feeling of having sand in my shoes, so that'll be the feeling you have for the rest of your life. Also, it's a Logia, so I guess you can become intangible. But the other fruit turns you into a jacket. Whoa! 300 billion berries! I want that! I was like, yes! Sold! 5 berries. 5 berries for the Suna no Mi. Here you go, kid. Just some random kid with his lunch money buys a Logia. I'm like, okay. Right? So obviously going by money alone, Logias would sell way more than Zones would sell. Well, I guess it depends on the Paramecia. I guess in that regard, Zones would probably sell for the least amount unless you get a really shitty Paramecia fruit, right? Unless you get something like that that's like super, like the jacket fruit, or something that's like useless. Now, when it comes to fruits that they don't know anything about, like, okay, this is the mystery devil fruit, they might hand them over to the world government, like, for example, the ones that were given to Kaku and Khalifa. Like, we don't know what these fruits do. They might give you a really shitty power. They might give you a really overpowered power. But it's probably best for, CP9, great assassins, to eat it. And the way Spondum spoke, it's like, no matter what the ability, I think obviously it was Lucci that said this. I don't think Spondum's smart enough to say this. Lucci would be like, no matter the case, you won't get weaker upon eating them. Like, even if it's an ability that's not a Logia, it doesn't give you some crazy overpowered strength, you won't get any weaker. And sure enough, Khalifa had soap and Kaku was a giraffe, but they adapted to those abilities very, very quickly, right? So that's the situation there. So yeah, all those reasons can explain why different devil fruits are more rare. And in the case with the Gamu Gamu no Mi, if this is a fruit the world government really wants, then you basically have to go up against the world government in order to get it. And this is not something like Luffy didn't just find this by happen chance, okay? Shanks, an already very strong, very prominent pirate, captured it from the world government directly, from their top assassin. Not something easy to do. Not any random pirate could just go out there and get the Gamu Gamu no Mi from CP9. Shanks was strong. He was very strong. He wasn't a Yonko quite yet back then, but he was still strong enough and able to get it. And then, Luffy just happened to have it because, Shanks and him were friends, and then he ate it by accident and he didn't know what it was, right? But in any other normal situation, this would have been very, very hard to get your hands on if, Shanks wasn't the one going after it, right? So anyway, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you kind of understand it maybe a little bit better, because I've seen a lot of these comments around, like, about rarities and all that stuff. But yeah, that's how devil fruit rarities can kind of shake down depending on the specific fruit it is. And so you could keep going through the list. I mean, you could, like, what about Corazone's fruit? Corazone had the Calm fruit, so it might be somewhere out there on Swallow Island still, maybe buried under the ground or under the snow or something, and, getting it's going to be difficult. Mother Caramel died, and then Big Mom has the Soul fruit. Any fruit that's wielded by a Yonko or an Admiral, that is inherently very rare, because number one, they're Yonko, they're very famous, in a lot of ways they got famous and got that strong because of their devil fruit ability, but also because, it's going to be hard to kill them to get the fruit back, so that's the situation. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. It's good to be back here, and yeah, review will be out tomorrow on Sunday. Get ready for this one. I have a feeling.